Hello, plant people. Welcome to my 100-day Syngonium stearmachii growth challenge. I'm embarking on a 100-day experiment with a fascinating Syngonium stearmachii, a plant known for its striking foliage and robust growth. My goal? To push the limits of its growth under optimal conditions. I'll be meticulously providing what I can to ensure maximum growth, from precise water and nutrient delivery to ensuring the plant has the right support with the moss pole. Every step is calculated to make this experiment a success. Let's dive in and set everything up for this challenge. Step 1 involves attaching the plant to a moss pole. The moss pole isn't just a structure for the plant to climb on and provide support, it's a lifeline. By attaching my Syngonium to this moss pole, I'm encouraging larger leaf growth and providing a consistent source of moisture and nutrients, thanks to the nutrients in the moss. I've got 2 Syngonium stearmachii plants here that I'm going to be putting up on my moss pole. This will amplify the visual effect of this plant and create a fuller, more lush and vibrant plant. This is a moss pole that I made earlier. This moss pole contains a substrate of sphagnum moss and tree fern fiber. The combination of sphagnum moss and tree fern fiber is ideal because it helps to keep that inside of that pole moist. The tree fern fiber is great at retaining moisture and does not become hydrophobic like the sphagnum moss, and the sphagnum moss also retains moisture. So this is a great substrate to use. I've also put a plastic sheet back on this moss pole, and what that does is it just reduces the surface area. Because this area of the moss pole is covered with plastic, it's not going to cause evaporation. So only this surface is causing evaporation, so that pole stays moist for a heck of a lot longer, and it looks fantastic if I do say so myself. So I'm going to put my 2 plants on this pole before I actually pot it up in my pot. I find it easier to work that way because I can easily position the pole exactly where I want it to be. Before I go on to pot up my plants, I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes this moss pole unique, especially when growing your plants in semi-hydroponics or leca, because we don't want the organic matter that's at the top of the moss pole going into that bit of the leca. So I have actually created a flap over here. You can see that I've flipped over the wire mesh and I've attached it to the back of that plastic sheet there. So that creates a separation, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're actually not getting any of that organic matter coming out of the bottom of that, as opposed to the way it would on that side of things where it's completely open. So that works really well when I'm potting my plants up in leca. We'll put that moss pole to the side for a second. I've got 2 actually pots with my Syngonium stearmachiis. This pot has got 2 plants. This one has got 1. And this pot actually, this plant is almost ready to go on a moss pole. You can see how it's, starting to get longer and it's getting that stem there. So that's really going to do well in the moss pole. This second plant over here is a little bit smaller. So I think I might go with this plant to put up on my moss pole, really, because I think that's going to work better. I'm just going to take the plants out of the pots. Ooh, that is quite tight, very hard. Oh, there we go. Oh, how gorgeous does that look? That just looks absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to try and separate these 2 plants because I don't want to pot up this little one. Oh, it's going to be a bit fiddly. So it doesn't really matter because Syngonium roots are actually quite very robust. So this is the little plant that I don't want to put on my pole. So I'll probably just put that over there. Put that to the side. And this is the plant that I'm looking to work with. Look at that gorgeous root system. Those roots are loving it in the leca clay balls. And this is the other plant that I want to put. So I'm just going to take that out. And again, oh my goodness, that is beautiful. These plants were actually cuttings that I took from my original Syngonium stearmachii. My original plant that you can see on the side here was doing really well. It was growing fabulously on a moss pole. and then I did something to it. I spilled some chemicals on the leaves and it looks terrible. So I made cuttings and here we are today. So, not all is lost when something happens with your plants. The next thing we're going to do is actually put my plants on my moss pole. I actually prefer to position my plants on my moss pole before I put the plants in the pot, because in that way it's easier for me to control exactly where I want the roots to be, which is away from the moss, because that's going to keep the roots moist. And if those roots are kept moist for too long of a time, then they're prone to getting root rot, and then your plant might actually die eventually. So I like to keep them far away from that. And the only way I can do that, especially when you're growing plants in leca, is to actually pre-position your plants before all that happens. I think that's the right, because there's a direction as well. So this looks like that's the back of the plant, this one over there. So I want to turn it over like so. And this one as well, you can see how that plant is starting to stalk that way. So I'm going to position that like that. So this is exactly the way I want my plants to be, in this same spot. And I do have some Velcro plant ties that I prepared earlier, and hopefully this should go around the width of that, and that shouldn't be a problem. So actually it looks like it might be a problem. I don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway, we'll see. It definitely does look like it's going. That's not going to be enough. That's okay. I'll just sort of piggyback them on each other. There we go. Now I've got a longer piece and I can do that. So I fasten my thing quite firmly like that, and that's exactly where I need them to be. When I put the plant up, I can very easily turn them around and make that a bit firmer, or I could probably use a clip or something else to position them exactly the way I want. But now that I've got that out of the way, it's time to actually pot up my plant. I've got a 14 centimeter nursery pot that I'm going to put my plant in. This is more than enough for what I'm trying to do with this plant. Now, I am going to put a moss pole in this, and I'm probably going to be extending that moss pole. Remember, the objective of this challenge is to grow my plant as much as I can. So I'm thinking that with this moss pole over here, that is not going to be enough. I'm probably going to need to extend it. So if I know I'm going to need to extend it, I'm going to need to stabilize that moss pole, and that's where this metal rod comes in. I've got a metal rod here that I am going to use to stabilize my pole. And the first thing I want to do is find out exactly how much of this metal rod I want to go in that pot. So that's over there, and that metal rod is just about there. So I put a marker on that. So I'll just use this Velcro plant tie like so. Like so. So I know that that's where that's going to be. I'll put that to the side for a second. And then when I turn around my pole, you can see that I've got these cable ties that I've put on this moss pole. And these cable ties are what I'm going to use to secure my metal rod to that moss pole. And what that does is make sure that it's all working as one unit. So I'll do that now. So for step 2, I'm ditching traditional soil or potting mix for something more efficient. Leca clay balls. These porous balls are fantastic for root aeration and maintaining a consistent moisture level for the plant roots and in turn the whole plant. The nursery pot that contains the leca and the plant will sit in a reservoir, also called a cache pot, filled with a nutrient solution, which is a fancy way of saying fertilizer mixed with water, ensuring my Syngonium has uninterrupted access to water and essential nutrients. The plant has got nothing left to do but grow. Now that I've got that sorted, I'm going to put my plant up in leca. So the idea is to stand my plant up like this, and I am going to start to fill that pot up with leca. I'll start from the back to provide that initial stability.
as well.
Just making sure I keep my moss pole straight. And as you can see, that moss pole becomes stable. Okay, I'm really, really happy with that. That is my Syngonium potted up in that moss pole. That moss pole is as stable as it can possibly be. I'm not touching it right now. I then put my moss pole in my reservoir and I'm going to fill that up with my Clonix Clone solution, which is my nutrient solution, and that's going to feed my plant. Location, location, location. Just like in the world of real estate, location is everything. I'm placing my Syngonium in a room surrounded by other plants. This isn't just for show. The high humidity created by these plants forms a microclimate that's ideal for my tropical Syngonium. If I decide to move my plants to another spot that's not as humid, using a humidifier is a simple way of getting additional humidity. Lighting. Lighting plays a crucial role in plant growth, and Syngoniums love a bright, indirect sunlight. The room I have my plant in is quite dark, so to replicate the perfect conditions the plant would have in the wild, I've installed a grow light. This isn't just any light. It's specifically designed to provide a light spectrum that mimics the natural sunlight crucial for Syngonium's growth. And to make sure everything is just right, I'm using this light meter to keep track of the light's intensity. In addition to light, there's another crucial element: temperature. Syngoniums thrive in warm environments, so I'm going to try to maintain a steady temperature between 18 to 24 degrees Celsius to mimic their natural tropical habitat. This is going to be the hardest part of this challenge for me, as the temperature in Melbourne fluctuates a lot, and we are now going into autumn and then winter. I hope for the sake of my electricity bill, I don't need to turn the heaters on. Wish me luck. Over these 100 days, I'll be closely monitoring the changes. I'll keep an eye on everything: the light levels, temperature, humidity, and the reservoir's nutrients levels, and keep the moss pole moist. All right, plant friends, today is day 82 of this Syngonium Stearmaki Growth Challenge. Look at this plant now. Wow, wow, wow. She is looking brilliant. Look at that leaf over there. And you can see that there's a tiny new leaf that's coming right over there. This plant is doing really, really well. I'm happy with how things are going. That's that in the reservoir over there. And yeah, I'm really happy with how things are going. So by the time 100 days comes along, I think we will probably have this new leaf have come up, and I think that might be it. Maybe we'll have another one from the other plant, but so far I think things are going really, really well for this Syngonium Stearmaki. And yeah, I'll see you at that 100-day mark. Hello everyone, this is the finale of our video. It's been 100 days since I put up this gorgeous Syngonium Stearmaki on this moss pole in this pot, and man oh man, isn't she looking just fantastic? She is looking beautiful. Look, I must confess, the plant has not grown as much as I hoped it would have, but then again, we are now in autumn in Australia, so that is not surprising at all. Look at that. Look at, the shape of those leaves. They just look absolutely brilliant. This is a plant that really does so much better living on a moss pole. It just, I hate moss poles, as all of you know now. I'm so trying to move away from them. But there's some plants that you've just got no choice. but to put it on a moss pole. So as you would remember, I didn't put all my cuttings up on a moss pole. This was one of those that I didn't put up on a moss pole. Look at that. Look at this one compared to this one. Honestly, there's just something about displaying a Syngonium on a moss pole. Now I want to show you what the root system of this plant is doing. Look at that. Look at those gorgeous, gorgeous roots over there. This plant is just really thriving, and I think it's really, really loving that leca and loving that moss pole. I really can't wait for the growing season to arrive in Australia, and when it does, I think this plant is going to be absolutely spectacular. I know you love a Syngonium. Go and check out this next video where I show you some of my other gorgeous Syngoniums. I'll see you there.